Let's bring in aviation analyst Fabrizio Poli, who joins us from Manchester here in the UK. Thank you very much for joining us, Fabrizio. So it is too early, of course, to determine the reason of the crash, but from your expertise, what are your first thoughts?
Well, if we look at the weather conditions, and this happens a lot in the winter in Almaty, there's icing conditions, basically. So we look at the temperature was minus 12 degrees. Clearly there was no engine failure, there was no indication of any fires. So to me, I think what happened is that they had ice on the wing, possibly some ice in the engines as well. When the passengers were evacuating the aircraft on the wings, some of them did slip and said there was ice on the wings. So what I think happened is they probably didn't de-ice the airplane, or they didn't de-ice the airplane enough or properly. Obviously, de-icing costs money to airlines, and I know that this airline in particular was going through an audit, and there were some issues. And a lot of airlines, when they don't start with enough capital. So if we look at the analysis of the accident, I would say, first of all, accidents never happen for one reason. They always happen for a series of reasons. So we'd have to look at the company, how they were doing, what their safety culture was, their safety philosophy was. Did the pilots de-ice? If they did de-ice, what type of de-icing did they do? But I'm sure that what happened here was ice on the wings. So the aircraft basically stalled after takeoff. It was also quite heavy because it was almost had a full load. And that's why it came back down onto the runway and crashed. And unfortunately, there was some people lost their lives.
And Fabrizio, I mean, most of the time, human error is, of course, involved. But what do we know about this aircraft, Fokker 100? Is it used a lot? Is it a very common aircraft? And what happens now?
Well, the Fokker 100 is an airplane that's no longer built. It was, back in the day when it was first built, and that was very technologically advanced, especially with the avionics and that. But they have no longer been making the Fokker 100 for many years now. It is prone to developing ice on the wings because the way the wing is designed, it doesn't have what's called slats. Now, slats are a surface in the front of the wing which allows the pilot to increase the surface of the wing, which in aerodynamic terms allows the airplane to take off and land at slower speeds, so hence have shorter runways. And it also improves performance and helps with situations like ice. Because what happens with ice over the wing, it changes the shape of the wing and then causes the stall speed to happen at higher speeds. And so, the fact that there were no slats on this airplane, but, again, this is an airplane which is fairly old, it's no longer made, but I wouldn't point the finger at the aeroplane because there have been other accidents like this on the Fokker 100. So, the pilot should have been trained and should have been told that this kind of thing does happen. And de-icing is really important, especially in an airport like Almaty. So we'd have to really look at, and once the accident investigators go in and look at all the data, they'll be able to see what the safety philosophy is of the airline. Did the pilots de-ice? What type of de-icing did they do? And all this kind of thing, as well as, the history of the pilots. Was the pilot in a hurry? Was he fatigued? I mean, there's so many elements here that have to be looked at to be able to pinpoint. But as all accidents, it will never be caused by one thing. It's usually 6 or 7 things. And this is called the Swiss cheese model. And that will be looked at as the investigators get more into the whole investigation.
Well, that's really good insight, Fabrizio. One last question. I mean, looking at this, and we say 12 dead from 100 people on board, it seems like a miracle to us. But does it seem like a miracle to you?
Well, no, because there was no smoke, there was no fire. And it happened at very low altitude. So there was impact, but because it happened from a lower altitude, the impact, and everybody had the seatbelts on and everything, there was no fire, there was no smoke. And that's why we've seen that there weren't that many people that died in this. So that's a good thing. There was an accident up in Scandinavia a number of years ago, similar situation. The plane actually came back down after takeoff and nobody got hurt. So this is not unusual in situations like this to do with icing.
Well, thank you very much for joining us here on TRT World, Fabrizio Poli.